Okay. Are the volunteers for today's class ready to make presentations on two readings we have for today's discussion? Usha Ramnathan and Ratna Kapoor.
Yes, ma'am, I'll make on Usha Ramnathan.
Okay.
It's a small presentation because there were too many cases, so I just made a very comprised presentation.
That's okay. That's fine. Did you get a chance to look at the three cases I asked you to look at again from your first year?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Yarsibai and Nanavati,
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
who all have read those two cases again. Okay, good. Good, Samya. Good, Ananya. Okay, Nidhi has raised her hand. Okay, we'll be able to carry on the discussion because no, it is important to read that again so that you can relate to the discussion, more easily than otherwise. So, who is going to tell? Not Ananya, and who's the other person to present on Ratna? I think he's still not joined. But anyway, what is your understanding of reasonableness? How do we determine? What are the factors which go to determine whether a certain okay, before we go there, do you remember any laws in which the standard of reasonableness has been employed, either by the judges or by legal provisions? You know,
Ma'am,
any laws?
and the early, ma'am, Hindu law basically, Hindu marriage.
Where is the standard of reasonableness there?
Ma'am, they have for reasonable women, I can say, because they have already, like in the earlier times, they have already like the women did not have the absolute ownership of the property and all that.
No, 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 not that one. So suppose, for example, which activity in marriage amount to cruelty and which is considered as daily tear and wear. So that's a standard of reasonableness that how much beating is reasonable and how much beating goes beyond that. So in that sense, I would say yes to some extent. And do you know this expression, rule of the thumb? Have you heard this expression, rule of the thumb?
Yes, ma'am. It means basic rule, the first rule.
Yeah. So rule of the thumb has its origin in the beating of legitimate wife beating. So the rule was that the husbands can beat their wives, but the stick with which they beat the wife should not be thicker than the thumb. So we had the reasonableness standard that if the man beats the wife with a thick which is not thicker than the thumb, that's reasonable. But if they use more violence than that or a thicker cane than that, then that's unreasonable. And you can see, that these are kind of blatant examples of that, the husbands could beat their wives, but not vice versa. But we are talking much more in the context of the Indian laws. So any other scenario you can think of where standard of reasonableness is employed? Reasonable man?
Ma'am,
Yes?
ma'am, that provision of the sudden and grave provocation, so that also employs this principle that how will a reasonable person react in a
Yeah.
particular situation.
So that's very good example. Sudden and grave provocation. Is it reasonable to lose your temper in these circumstances? So whether an ordinary person will lose their self-control in those circumstances, which this person has less. So it was not merely sufficient that a person lost their self-control, but it was also required to say whether it was reasonable to lose your self-control in those scenarios. So yes. Any other examples you can
And
think
the thing is that the sudden provocation, what would come under sudden provocation was really shocking. That if a wife answers back, if she's not obedient, this would also come under sudden provocation. That this might cause sudden provocation to the husband, and he can hit her if she answers back, if she's not taking care of the kids. Or like these small things can cause sudden provocations.
So what we are hearing from in this conversation is that even though we said reasonable man includes reasonable woman, But actually, it was the man only to the exclusion of women's experiences, which construed. So that leads us to the question that when we are determining reasonableness, whose standard of behavior we will take into account, whether sex of the person, gender of the person is of any consequence in determining whether it is reasonable or not. We have got cases where a man was called infertile, napunsak. So that was sufficient to give him grave and sudden provocation to the extent of killing the man abusing, the other person abusing. And we have heard of Banj, the women being referred to as Banj. And this is just one of the taunts the women suffer. And we have not come across women who have lost their self control because they were called Banj. So, somewhere, what will constitute grave and sudden provocation is very gendered. But the gender which has been employed to determine reasonableness has been the male gender. So women falling within the same category leaves us more questions. When a woman behaves, one particular woman behaves in the same manner as men behave. So is she a reasonable man? Or whether in determining her actions, the standard of reasonableness then will say, oh, ordinary women do not behave in this manner. Or whether we will judge her behavior irrespective of her gender. So these are the kind of questions we need to really think of in determining. There are lots of laws. And we certainly, as we progress in the course, we will look at laws which are gender neutral, but actually have taken the standard of males' behavior and responses, the males' experiences and responses to a situation as the standards to judge human behavior, even though women may not be behaving in that manner. In this diagram, let's look at the two readings, which give us quite an insight, and the cases which Usha Ramanathan has looked at from 1900 to 1950. Anyone can do a study after 1950 till date. And recently, you must have seen that this has been all over the net. Groping the breast of a woman without, of a young child, without removing her clothes is not sexual assault. This is a woman judge. And I emphasize on the fact that it's a woman judge, because we have been saying that you put a woman in a judge position, she'll be sensitive to the women issues. A very clear example, it is nothing to do with the body of the person. It has to do with the thinking of the person. So this judge is certainly not showing the sensibility and sensitivity of the issue. When she declares, and this has, she has declared not only for this particular girl, this is a ruling which will apply to all women, and construction of lot more high courts and judges. Of course, now the criticism and everyone's shock is so palpable in this point of time that how could anyone say that if there's no skin-to-skin contact, it is because the section says physical contact. The physical contact, whether my body is only my body in the skin or is my body within the clothes also my body. So there are lots of questions which are left, and this whole understanding of, is it a reasonable interpretation of the law? Why is this interpretation coming? What is it? Where is the judge coming from? Why is she saying, oh, the man is guilty for sexual assault, but not under POCSO? Both the sections use the word sexual assault as the title of the section, but she looks at the language of the POCSO to saying physical contact has to be skin-to-skin contact. And so certainly, there are lots of things which are still happening. So it's not that Usha Ramanathan's study is outdated, that she's looked at 1900 to 1950. It's only indicative that how the standards have continued to be male-centric and how there is need to determine who is a reasonable man, reasonable woman, and reasonable person. So Ananya, are you ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You want to share screen? No, you've gone mute, Ananya. You've gone mute. You're muted.
Yes, ma'am, I'm trying to share because this is the first time I'm sharing, so I'm looking
Yeah,
how
so
to
there are these three. There are these three dots, and before that is present now.
present now. So yes,
And
okay,
then on the screen it will say a window.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so check that out.
Share. Okay. Is it visible at the screen?
Yes, it's getting visible.
Okay.
Yes, it's here.
Okay. So the reading we are do. Am I audible as well?
Yes.
Okay. So this reading is of Usha Ramanathan. The images 1920 to 1950. That is, she has taken the cases of 1920 to 1950. Reasonable man, reasonable woman, and reasonable expectations. So let's know who is Usha Ramanathan. First, she is a recognized expert on law and poverty. She's an advocate of Supreme Court, and she was a leading critic of Aadhaar. We all know that Aadhaar biometric identity scheme. She was a leading critic for that. She was a member of Amnesty International's panel on economic, social, and cultural right, which is a human right organization. She is a human right activist as well. Her research includes human rights, torts, and environment, and she has published her article in various newspapers such as Frontline, Hindu, Indian Express, The Wire, and many more. So now,
Usha Ramanathan is also an alumni for Delhi University. She's done a PhD with us
okay, yes, okay, ma'am.
on compensation.
So, in this article, she has revisited the decisions of High Court between 1920 and 1950. She has characterized the nature of reasonable man and reasonable woman from a judicial point of view, how the generalization was made for reasonable man and reasonable women, and how it was different for both of them. Who's a reasonable man? She has constructed it from the decisions of the high courts between 1920 and 1950, and we'll realize after the end of this reading that somehow those decisions, somehow that thinking, that conditioning has been carried forwarded by and still being practiced in the present scenario, at least some of them. And I have experienced a lot of them, so it was like, okay, how. So firstly, we'll know who is a reasonable man. We all have read this term in our law. Reasonable man, the expectations of a reasonable man, the standard we set for every law, be it negligence, how are you supposed to have a knowledge about a particular thing. So we know who is a reasonable man. It is used for judicial convenience to set a standard by which we measure or determine something.
Yeah,
But we
tort law
never
was another example. We have said reasonable care.
reasonable care. What
Yeah.
is suppose, what is basically supposed from a particular human being? What is that? एक reasonable human being क्या करेगा हर situations में? That standard was set up by a reasonable man, and it's a fictional character. As we know, we have just made him a very moral. One thing she wrote, that a reasonable man is someone who gets things from outside to feed a family and things like that. So now, who is a reasonable woman? We have never came across this word, and Usha Ramanathan mentions that the presence of reasonable man alerts us to the possible existence of a reasonable woman. Who is she? And according to her, this phrase was never enunciated because, according to the legislator at that time, women, minors, and the mentally incapable were put together and were considered as being deficient in reason, that they have no reason, they were not mature enough to be categorized as reasonable women, or reasonable children or anything. In this article, she has portrayed women in three categories. Basically, she thinks that women in law are portrayed in three categories. First is wife, second is non-wife, third is criminal. uh, in this article, she has her most focused on the wife, and how her life revolves around being a dutiful wife, how her life revolves around her husband and her marriage and her matrimonial home. That was all about the wife. Second is non-wife. She was deprived of the status given to the wife, but she and and she was given a status separate from a legal from a wife, and she was considered not a reasonable woman. At the end of the day, we know prostitute, concubine, your mistress is not a reasonable woman. And third is criminal. Ma'am, I don't understand what is like criminal. She has segregated one category of criminal.
Mhm.
So now marriage. So she has her this entire reading is one of the focuses of this entire reading is on marriage. How a marriage should be, what are the bases of marriage, and how a woman should act in a marriage, and that would be considered a reasonableness of a woman. So property, as we all have studied in our Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu inheritance and everything, that the woman, though after the death of her husband was the legal owner of the property, she was never allowed to alienate the property. She was never allowed to transfer the property except there was a legal necessity. And she mentioned that what would come under legal necessity was the performance of any religious act conducive to the welfare of the husband, or any act which through which the respect of that husband would be taken care of, or gifting it to the son in law, that means dowry. There was this case where a woman, the husband's family wanted to take the property from the widow, but her property wasn't given to the family because the women argued that she wanted to use that property to give it to the son-in-law, the husband of the daughter. And hadn't she given the property, she wouldn't get her daughter married. So gifting it to son-in-law was considered a legal necessity. Along with that, divorce was not a legal necessity. A widow cannot alienate her property if she wants to support her mother, because after marriage, the house of the husband is the house of the wife, and she cannot even alienate the property if her daughter wants to get a divorce and to support herself. So we know that there was very few legal necessities, and it was only confined to the husband or giving to dowry. Now divorce. Now when we came across divorce, it did not get the support the marriage does. It was looked down upon. It was against public policy because of the status that marriage confers upon after consummation, especially. It was so serious and far reaching that only on a very rare cases the divorce was provided, such as cutting the nose of the wife would amount to getting a divorce, but small beating won't. It was considered to be very unwifely conduct to even ask for a divorce, because a woman was supposed to take few beatings and supposed to be obedient to the husband and not ask for divorce, even if the husband has brought a mistress to the home. She was considered to A woman was denied a divorce, that she went to her parents' house, she lived there for some time, and in that duration, her husband got a mistress. Then she asked for a divorce, and the courts refused to deny the divorce, that she's supposed to go back to her house and should get back into the relation with her husband, and she was not granted the divorce even after the mistress. It was very rare, as I said, and state was vitally concerned. Is for state, whatever the state said, no matter how bad the situation were for women, if state said that it is not allowed, you guys, you cannot get a divorce, you cannot get a divorce. There was no other chance for women to get out of a abusive relationship, because and state gave uh, divorce बहुत ही after you know after a strict I can say कि बहुत देख के कि abuse है कि नहीं इस relationship में. It was very rare. Like, I don't know why state was so concerned, but they believe that divorce is very against the public policy and everything. So violence, what was considered violence during that time? She has mentioned that there was some judicial tolerance, and in all these cases, you couldn't get a divorce or a judicial separation. Small beatings, not a cruelty, can chastise his wife moderately. And this was especially used for a poor and uncivilized person, that okay, they can beat their wife moderately, they can punish their wife moderately, and if there are few isolated acts of violence, it would not constitute cruelty or violence. they for example, woman was tied with her hands and feet, and she was hanging at the front door of her house, and this was not included in violence because this was just one act of violence, and there should be a repeated act of violence to constitute a violence, and that she should be allowed to get divorced or not. One thing which I was really shocked to read, that there was a session judge who was obsessed with his belief that men actually have the right to beat their wives. And he actually gave that judgment. He made that statement, though it was disregarded by the High Court. But one session judge gave this decision. And it was so of interest to the people that they got books published having a debate whether the husband should have a right to beat the women or not, the husband should have a right to beat the wife or not. They have quoted paragraphs from Quran, Manusmriti, Bible, quoting that yes, they have been allowed to beat the wife, and all the judges and legislators should give a eye to these readings and should allow such act of violence to normally take place in a matrimonial home. Now, maintenance. The husband must support his wife. She talked about maintenance, that basically all this comes from she's been a property which should be maintained. He can do in his house, and along with that, a wife cannot insist to be treated as a wife. She can ask to be treated as a member of a family, but she was not entitled to be treated as a wife. She cannot ask for that. She was a person who is only supposed to be maintained, only supposed to bear the children of her husband. And if a wife is unchaste wife, she deserve bare and mere starvation maintenance. Even though a husband was allowed that he might remarry, if a woman has a relation outside her marriage, she was completely disregarded. I'm not supporting this argument being unchaste or something, but there were different standards set for men and women. That's why I quoted this example. uh, Due to this obligation, and why was this obligation to maintain his wife? It was from, if a man will leave his wife, and there would be no option left for the wife except it to get into the profession of prostitution to live her life. They're to protect the deserted wife from the bitter necessity of earning a living by trading on their sex. So this was the reason, this was the anxiety which was there, for legislators and the husband, that she was supposed to be maintained. Now comes the guardianship, and here it was a problem because women was considered a property between her husband and the father. By the year she's 10 or 12, she used to get married at that time. So she was a property. Before that, it was all about her father, and after that, it was all about her husband. And even if she gets married at a very young age when she's minor, the husband became the legal guardian the uh, of the of the minor daughter. So they were actually tussle between the father and the husband for the disposition of the wife and the possession and the power, that who has a control over the wife. Possession and control. So husband was a legal guardian, and also if the father wanted to procure a minor girl, he was charged with criminal offenses, and sometimes the legal custody was given to the father till the time the minor attained her puberty. But even in that scenario, if a husband got a chance to get the girl, he got a chance to find the girl, he can take her, and there would be no criminal offense against the husband. So after marriage, the wife was just a property for her husband. He can do whatever he wants to do for to her. Or we can see the example in adultery as well. Adultery was an offense that could only take place unless there was if there is no consent of the husband. If there is a consent of the husband that the wife can have sex with the other man, there was no adultery. So basically she was a complete property, and there was no choice given to women. Like, it wasn't even ask from her if she wants to do this, if she wants to get married. There was irrelevance to the emotion, choice, need, and determination. And anyone who combined their sentiment with the sufferings of the women, they were set of punishment that would be rewarded to them. So neither women can stand up for themselves, not somebody else. If a father is standing for the if a father wants to take the daughter away from the husband's home, he was charged with kidnapping sometimes, and also with the illicit child trafficking. There were also sections which would uh, attract the father. Now, the punishment of offenses, that was very common during that time, for infidelity, for any crime, that was very common, and there was special reason because of which we can commute the death. Now we'll look into the, and wife's murder was really common because they did not recognize domestic violence as such, but wife's murder was really common. And let's look into the reason to commute death. Firstly was adultery. If a woman was caught in adultery, if a woman was caught that she was having an illicit relation with some other man, this might give sudden provocation to the husband, and he might kill the husband. And sudden provocation, as we already mentioned, what was sudden provocation? In one of the cases, if the wife is not obedient to the husband, if the wife is giving shameless, if giving answers back to her husband, she's answering back to her husband, this all would come under slow provocation. A case which was mentioned that a husband was beating his wife for so long, and that at the end of the day he asked to leave the home. She was sent away, and then she started living in some place, she started earning. And one fine day, he found her on road and gave her 11 wounds, and stabbed her 10 times, and did everything. And and they included this under sudden provocation because wife was living in a place not suitable to live or something. So even after he has disregarded the wife, he has thrown her out of her life. This was also came under sudden provocation. So the standard which we have set for sudden provocation was too much, was too little. Like, and if a man discovers a wife in the act of adultery and kills her, it was not under it never came under the murder, it was under manslaughter. And also, if a man caught a wife having an illicit affair in an adultery, he can also demand for damages. Now we see the difference that a man was even allowed to have a mistress. He was even allowed to remarry. But if a woman does it, it was it was considered very degrading, and the husband had the chance to murder the adulterer or the wife himself. So, and next she touches upon the prostitution, that at that time the prostitution was really prevailing, and they have given them a legal status, and which was denied to the wife somehow. Like, they have just completely, you can say, for a good or bad, they have completely separated them, the prostitutes and the wife. And a prostitution was not considered a reasonable woman. She was not supposed to be judged as a reasonable woman. She was often denied to have the right of adoption because it was considered that she is adopting to carry forward the trade of prostitution. And it was often considered that dancing and singing were the advertisement of profession, which we generally also hear it now. If somebody is dancing, some girl is dancing, so they kind of connote various negative terms to that. So this I also see in current scenario. So after doing a whole research, she has mm, constructed the reasonable man or reasonable women, and what were the reasonable expectations. She has revisited the decisions of 1920 and 1950, between 1920 and 1950, and she has certain point that this was considered to be a reasonable woman, and he is considered to be a reasonable woman. So what is the description of that? So here's reasonable women. A reasonable woman is a wife. She should be maintained. She's married young. She has no choice. She was a property which either belonged to her father or her husband. She's supposed to be obedient to her husband. She was sexually available to her husband, which is also considered a cruelty in today's life. If she is not providing sex to the husband, it is considered cruelty, but marital rape is still not recognized. Unwifely conduct to ask for divorce, it's still a taboo. Bears her husband children. It was like the children she carries is not her own, but her husband's children. She cannot expect to be treated as a wife. She is only supposed to be maintained, not entitled to stay in matrimonial home. Does not put obstacles in the path of her husband marrying another. In a case where she went to her parents' house, like it was considered very bad if a woman after marriage moved back to her parents' house. For some reason, it was considered very bad. So one woman went to stay with her father's house, original father's house, and the husband remarried again. And this was not and after a lot of discussion, the court asked her to stay with her husband again because it was the wife's conduct which made her husband marry again. That she went back to her father's place. She cannot complain of rape after marriage, obviously. She cannot answer back that because that might cause sudden provocation. She was incapable of being a legal guardian. Even she cannot file a case for herself. If a woman is being seduced, it was if a woman is being enticed by another man, she cannot file a case on her own, and only a father can file a case for her because it was considered that if she is getting seduced, that is by her own consent. So if only a father and a husband can file a case against the adulterer, against the person who is taking her, and a prostitute woman is not a woman. Now we come under reasonable men. Who is a reasonable man? A reasonable man is a man who gets dowry at the time of marriage. He may marry again. He can chastise his wife in moderation. He can beat her, but he cannot cut her nose. This was the point that cutting nose of a woman was considered a cruelty, but small beatings not. May murder his wife if he catches her in adultery. Okay, has control over his wife and a daughter by the age for the age till 12 or 14. After marriage, the husband has a control. May demand damages from the adulterer if he knows that his wife is cheating on him or is involved with the other men. He can ask divorce, and he can ask for damages, and only the situation, the facts and circumstances would such be that he had a control over the wife. You would look into the all the situations की control था कि नहीं wife पर husband का. If there was no control, if she was not an obedient wife, he couldn't demand any damage from the adulterer. He was entitled the custody of his wife, even minor included. Even if she was not ready to consummate, she is a kid. She was not ready to consummate. He can even ask her not to. He can even ask the court not to allow her to stay with her parents, but to get a separate home for her so that she can be away from her parents' home. Prolonged agony may cause him to kill, and this would come under sudden provocation. That this different standard set for men ki if a woman is not taking care of the children, if she for long she has literally irritated the husband, this might cause him to kill the husband. So this is how she has set up the standard that what is a reasonable man and reasonable woman from looking back into the cases and how these were the judgments of the judges at that time. This is how the high courts and the session courts used to think about women, about marriage, about divorce, and from this she has constructed that okay, this is a reasonable woman, and this is a act which expectations from a reasonable woman, that she's supposed to act in this way, and this is a reasonable expectation from a man. And we see there's a huge difference between them. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ananya. That was a very good presentation. So anybody who has thoughts after listening to Ananya, can you think of any examples from these three cases I asked you to? Ananya, stop sharing your screen, please. Yeah. So, can you think of any examples from the cases I asked you to read? Can you find any reflections of these ideas about reasonable behavior? The three cases
Ma'am,
that, yes, Meda.
ma'am, in both Dheerajya case and the Gyarsibai case, the court has accepted that domestic violence happens, and
Yes.
it's like common, and it's like no
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's normalization.
And so is the case in Nanavati, where it's taken to where it's like taken to be given that if a husband finds out about his wife being with some other man, so it's normal for him to feel enraged rather than just seek a divorce and just go away to to
Mhm.
go and kill the man or kill the woman. So it's taken to be a given, and in fact, in the Nanavati case, this adultery of women, it's mentioned that this book Russell on Crime,
Mhm.
they have even identified adultery of wife being a cause of murders by the husband. So it's
Mhm.
like it has to be taken as a reason, a proper reason for a crime to be committed.
Yeah, that's very good understanding of these cases. When you compare, remember what are the story, what are the facts in Dhiraji and Gyarsibai? Anybody other than Medha and Ananya? You remember what were the facts in these two cases?
Ma'am, I can tell about
Yes,
Dhirajya
Medha.
case.
Yeah.
Dhirajya was a young woman. She was married to a guy named Jagga, and they had a 6-month-old child. And apparently, Dhirajya and Jagga had a quarrel. And the next day, Jagga
Do
woke
you
up
remember the
and found
reason for the quarrel?
she was not allowed to go back to her parents' house
Yeah.
to visit. Uh,
And I
the
think her
next
brother
day,
was to get married and she was not permitted to go. So that's
yes,
the
ma'am.
kind of control husband is exercising over the wife.
Yes, ma'am.
And yeah,
And
then.
during the quarrel, Dhirajya admitted later on that Jagga threatened her, like threatened to beat her. So
Mhm.
the next day, she left with her 6-month-old, and when Jagga found out, he chased her, and when she realized that he was following her, so she panicked and she jumped, I think, in a well or did something, and she survived, but her 6-month-old died.
Mhm.
So the case was about whether she should be punished for the killing of her child because, like, whether it was
Which section
intentional
do you
or
remember?
302. I think, ma'am,
Yeah,
section
302, but
302 of
under
IPC.
which clause of 300? Fourthly,
Yes, ma'am.
it was charged under
I'm sorry, there's some
302, but
construction work
the
going on.
offense made out was 304, 300, fourthly, which says, does an act um, knowing that it is of imminent danger likely to cause death? So when she jumped into the well, as a reasonable woman, she should have known that there was an imminent danger which was likely to cause death, and she did it without an excuse. So, what did the court say? What did the court
Ma'am,
hold in this case? Yeah.
ma'am, the court said that she. I'm sorry, I'll write it down. There's construction going on in my building.
Mhm.
It's okay now. Yeah. So, ma'am, the court said that the woman can't be punished for seriously for this offense because she was frightened by by the threatening of her husband. So
Mhm.
she could be given a punishment of 6 months, but she already served more than that in jail, so she must be acquitted. I think that was
She
the
had
thing.
killed in a state of panic. So
Yes,
that
ma'am.
was considered as an excuse. So that then it was not that she killed the child, She did the act without an excuse. So the fact that she got into a state of panic, it was said. And then they compared it with Supadi's case. The contrast was that in Supadi's case, one second, my dog has sat on the wire of my laptop and it's pressing on it. Let me just remove this. Okay, so in Supadi, the argument was that in Supadi, the child was on her back when she jumped into the well. So Supadi, Dhirajya, and Gyarsibai. Supadi is mentioned in these three cases. So the distinction was that in the Supadi's case, which was prior to Dhirajya, the child was on her back, and the judges said, oh, she might have forgotten that there was a child on the back. The second one, the child was in her lap. The judges said, no, the husband was in hot pursuit, and she got into a state of panic. In Gyarsibai, she left the house after a fight with her sister-in-law, saying that I'm going to jump into the well. So she took her 3 children with her and jumped into the well. The children died, she survived. So the same question was again that whether in her case there can be any excuse. So first case, she did not know the child was in her lap. The second case, they said she was in a state of panic because the husband was in hot pursuit. But the third one, there was no such hot pursuit. So then the question is that whether there was any excuse for Gyarsibai. And also look, and coming back to Dhirajya herself, what kind of beating the husband might have been giving her for her to get into such a state of mind that she thought that jumping into the well is better than beating by the husband. So it is certainly not a scenario where the beating in the past must have been within the reasonable category, whatever that reasonable category was. So this wife got into such a panic, just fearing that what kind of consequence she will face. So look at this, this married wife. We always think of the marriage as being the solace and the ultimate goal for the woman's life. These cases are indicative, and we have seen this in the National Family Health Survey also, that wife beating continues to be normalized. 1 in 3 married women are subjected to domestic violence. And so it is not that it was happening in 1930s and 40s or 20s and is not happening today. The scenario is still the same. And the fact that the women get so terrorized, why were these women not know? I was at a seminar recently, 2 days back, and there the woman leader said, oh, ladke ka kaan pakdo, 2 thappad lagao saath mein. I said, tell me, how is it possible? The husband is taller, older, heavier, and how do you expect to match him physically in order to give him 2 thappad on the face when he beats you up? So somewhere we are not recognizing the physical limitation, apart from the fact that women are not trained to give those thappads to the husband, neither psychological nor physically. But we expect that they will retaliate. But no, the women in reality know that if they retaliate, they will get into more trouble. So even though she sneaked out of the house, because she was clear she wanted to go, but she was still afraid of her husband, so she didn't kind of defy him and said, I'm going. She sneaked out. And when the husband discovered and she found that he was in hot pursuit, she got into that state of panic. So in this case, the judge declared that this was an excuse, and therefore a reasonable excuse for which she cannot be charged with 302, 304 will be okay. Now coming to Gyarsibai, same domestic violence, and both categories are talking about instances because it cannot be. There's not much detail of what the domestic violence was, but in Gyarsibai, where her husband was also beating, and the judge says, no, as normally happens. So the husband used to beat her, but that particular day she had a fight with her sister-in-law, and then she left. So the judge said, no, there's no reasonable excuse. So in her case, the fact that there has been long-term domestic violence, which had put her into a state of mind where she said, now enough is enough, I'm not going to live with it anymore. So what we are aiming at is that, we were talking about the other class, slow burn syndrome, that one day she blows up. She bears with a lot of violence and wrongdoing for a long time, but one day her patience reaches the top where she can't bear it anymore. She explodes. Sometimes she implodes, harms herself, kills herself. Sometimes she explodes and harm the other, usually the man who has been hitting her and committing violence. So, Kiranjit Ahluwalia is the example where she attacked the other, and that imploding and exploding both have been consequences of long-term wrongdoing and violence against them. So, judges in these cases did not take cognizance of the fact. So, in Dheerajya also, they were not talking about long-term violence. They were just saying on that incident there was a hot pursuit. So that hot pursuit changed the thing. It is not the fact that she jumped into the well for something else, but because in this case it was spontaneous on the spot. The husband was following and she jumped. But in Gyasi Bai, her state of mind was such because of the long-term violence. Judges did not take cognizance of that. When you look at cases in Nanavati, where they're talking about this woman was habitually into illicit relationships, and when one day when the husband challenged her, she mocked at him and she retaliated instead of being apologetic, saying that I know you have also been having affairs. So the fact that she was in a long-term illicit relationship must have created a state of mind that he could not take this retaliation. So the fact of the long-term adulterous relationship of the wife have created a state of mind in the man because of which he exploded and lost his temper. So in case of the male offender, the judge did think about the slow burn syndrome. They did not use these words. But they say that no, this must created a state of mind because of which he exploded. In another case, also quoted in Anavati, the judges do talk about the case where the man has moved, no, the wife was having an adulterous relationship, so they moved from that city to another village, that village to another village, and then the husband found she having meals with that man, and he lost his temper. Again, says the fact that there was this past history must have caused him, because they were not having sex when he found them, they were just having meals. But the fact that they were in a relationship before and he had moved a court, he was not expecting now this to happen. So the past history would again take a note of in determining whether losing temper in these circumstances was reasonable. So judges were very well aware of the slow burn syndrome, that people do get angrier and angrier. Even in this other case where the husband peeps into the room where his wife and his brother-in-law are having sex, and then he comes back and lays down on his charpoy. Then the brother-in-law comes and lies down on the next cot and goes off to sleep. Then he stabs him to death. The judge says that he must have been getting angrier and angrier, that now he has defiled my wife and now he's coming and sleeping on the next door. So judges were aware, but are aware of the slow burn and getting angrier as the moment passes rather than cooling down. But in case of women, they have never employed those state of mind. So, and it's not that at that time certainly the conversations were not that this is the male behavior, this is the female behavior. But when you look at who are the victims, who are the offenders in these cases, you do realize that judges decided by the male standards and male experiences all the cases. And they certainly were more sympathetic to the men committing violence in a lot of scenario than women. So when Ananya was saying that you don't understand how the women were created criminal, Usha Ramnatha does mention to those cases where so the two cases he has referred to, where the woman kills small children and takes jewelry. So that is not seen as a one-off incident of a one-off woman. So she was sentenced to death penalty straight away. No exceptions, no sympathy, empathy, nothing was there. So somewhere the construction of the woman as an offender was considered that no, she's a hardened criminal and therefore entitled to the most severe punishment. And we've seen lots of cases when husbands killed wives, judges had this understanding that this is bad, but okay, life imprisonment. But if a wife kills the husband, it is huge. You can't kill your Pati Parmeshwar. So the construction of that, what women can do, women can't ask divorce, they can't be violent because they're supposed to be caring, they're supposed to know if they're supposed to be caring and they do any criminal activity, it is horrifying. So lots of time, and also what I did notice in another case, I don't remember the name just now, in which both the paramour and the wife and her paramour, they were both held guilty of murdering the husband. So the wife was given life in prison. Both of them were given death penalty. The wife never appealed. The paramour appealed against the death penalty, and his death penalty was reduced. So wife who never appealed must have got hanged. The husband, the paramour, got a change in the punishment from death penalty to life imprisonment. So wife killing the husband is much more serious an offense than the paramour killing the husband. So also you will find that when women attack their husbands, they very exceptionally will do it alone, or when the man is in the full senses, because she knows that she is not powerful enough to physically handle this, tackle this man who is maybe abusive. And in those scenarios, the judges do not look at the physical capacity of the woman to retaliate in the same manner as a man would do in those circumstances. So somewhere when we examine this, that in the name of equality, in the terminology, that reasonable man, we've always said man includes woman, accepting the one definition in the IPC. So therefore, when we are constructing reasonable man, it is actually assuming that reasonable man behaves in this manner, women in that category behave in a certain manner, and anybody who deviates from that is not the reasonable character, is not behaving in a reasonable manner. So there's a very gendered category of reasonable man, which is set to include women, but actually do not. Women's behavior is judged by factors other than what is on the plate, without reference to their gender. It comes through that, as women, they're expected to behave in a certain manner. So when Ananya has given the conclusion from Usha Ramanathan, it's coming that what are the circumstances in which it is seen this is unreasonable for a man to do it? So violence by women, completely unacceptable. Some violence by men, acceptable, reasonable behavior. And in Nanavati, there's one more thing, that the men can lose their temper, Indian men. So there was a standard of the Indian men and the British men. In Britain, they had not recognized oral confession of adultery as a sufficient ground to lose your self-control. So Nanavati did not catch his wife in a illicit relationship. It is only she confessed. So it was word of mouth only. So if the same incident had happened in England, without reference to anything else, they would say that no, he's not entitled to claim the defense because he could not have lost self-control as a reasonable person. But Indian men get more angry, and therefore Indian men can lose their self-control even on the confession of adultery. So in Nanavati, it was not said that he did not lose self-control, or it was unreasonable to lose self-control. Nanavati said that he had regained self-control after 3 hours. So that's the take, that in case of, we have not come across women who lose their self-control in similar circumstances. There's no question of losing or not losing in the first place in order to regain. And therefore, the standards of reasonable man, it is said to be, and I was looking at the judgment, some excerpts from the Nanavati case, and the para 19, that says, is there any standard of a reasonable man for the application of the doctrine of grave and sudden provocation? No abstract standard of reasonableness can be laid down. What a reasonable man will do in certain circumstances depends upon the customs, manners, way of life, traditional values, etc. In short, the cultural, social, and emotional background of the society to which an accused belongs. In our vast country, there are social groups ranging from the lowest to the highest state of civilization. It is neither possible nor desirable to lay down any standard with precision. It is for the court to decide in each case, having regard to the relevant circumstances. It is not necessary in this case to ascertain whether a reasonable man placed in the position of the accused would have lost self-control momentarily or even temporarily when his wife confessed to him of her illicit intimacy with another, For we are satisfied on the evidence that the accused regained his self-control and killed Ahuja deliberately. So somewhere they are holding, they are keeping the full power to determine self-control issues to themselves in every single case. And the analysis of Usha Ranganathan shows that how individual cases, there is no generalization of human beings, there are generalizations about men and women. And certainly we haven't seen anything about the other in this conversation because others did not exist legally speaking at that point of time. So that was good presentation, Ananya. Does anyone have any thoughts?
One question.
Yes, please.
How did this ये thought कैसे आया that after marriage the house of the women before her maternal house doesn't belong to her anymore?
अरे आपके तो हिंदू लॉ में था, मैरिड women did not have a right of residence in their maternal family. ये तो बाद में abolish हुआ है, very recently.
अभी तो हुआ that yes, she also has a right.
10-15 साल पहले हुआ, 10-15 साल में हुआ है कि that this has been that provision, पता नहीं section 23 था कि कौन सा था, which said that married women did not have a right of residence in their natal family.
Is there any reason for this? Why?
हिंदू लॉ में उसका तो गोत्र बदल जाता है ना. After marriage, she loses her gotro of her parental family.
Okay.
Technically, no, अभी तो लड़कियां रखती हैं अपना सर में काफी सारी, but technically she is no more belonging to that clan. जो भी हमारा गोत्र का सिस्टम है, उसके तो सारी टाई सीवियर हो जाती है वहां से, as per the traditional Hindu law. Only now that we're calling, she continues to be Upasana, she continues to be whatever, but जो traditional Hindu law है, उसके हिसाब से तो she has no more connections with her natal family. So that's why no property rights, no right of, no, imagine right of residence wasn't there, forget about property. Okay, so who was presenting on Ratna Kapoor? Anyone who remembers? Was a male student from the outside the class. He very promptly said that yes, he was going to present. Anybody else who has read the reading? Ratna Kapoor? When nobody reads, you know what? How easy my task becomes. That's the easiest task for me. We would consider Ratna Kapoor to have been discussed. You will read it to yourself. And then if you have any question at any stage, you can come and ask in the class. So I have a video for you to see then, if you are not discussing Ratna Kapoor. And you know Sunny Leone?
Yes.
Anyone? You know?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so there's an interview taken by one of the established journalists. And let's see What are the biases he is coming through in that interview? Figure out whether you will hear the voice, because there were some issues with voice. Forgot where was the sound arrangement in this. And okay, let's see whether you can hear. If you can't hear, let me know. Are you able to hear?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and that's what I need to sort out. There is some setting which I need to change.
Individual who's loved and loathed in equal measures in our country. She's someone who generates curiosity and hatred all at the same time. She's the most Googled person of 2015, even triumphing our very own Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But she remains contentious, controversial, and someone often described as completely antithetical to what we perceive is the idea of an Indian woman. From porn star to being a Bollywood star, Sunny Leone, our guest on the hot seat.
when you were able to hear, could you see?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, so that's where I kind of stopped, and I'm still, when I'm trying different options, and it doesn't tell me. Yes, it's available on YouTube, and when I'm saying present, it's not taking tab, it's not taking entire screen on the window. It doesn't show me the video, so I'm just wondering how to share this.
Ma'am, I guess you have to turn off your camera and mic after that the presentation, you know, the screen
No,
presentation.
because what's happening is that when I put the, I have to share a screen. So I have to share some screen. So I am sharing the file manager, but from there it is not taking the screen of the video when it starts. That's where the issue is, because my screen is, the video is on, is open. I've done this earlier and I didn't have a problem, but today I do not know. It is not showing me that screen. Okay, now I can see. And now I've just changed the settings for the sound and it will come.
Individual who's loved and loathed in equal measures in our country. She's
It is,
someone
ma'am.
who generates curiosity and hatred all at the same time. She's India's most Googled person of 2015, even triumphing our very own Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But she remains contentious, controversial, and someone often described as completely antithetical to what we perceive is the idea of an Indian woman. From porn star to being a Bollywood star, Sunny Leone, our guest on the hot seat. From Karanjit Kaur to Sunny Leone, quite a whirlwind. Sunny. I mean, I'm calling you Sunny, not Karanjit.
It's fine. You can call me
But
Sunny.
does someone call you Karanjit by any chance?
There's only a few people in my life that do, and those are my closest friends and
Your family members still call
my
you
husband and my brother.
as Karanjit and not Sunny.
They call me Karen.
Karen. No.
Is
Is
it-
it
yeah.
Karanjit or is it Karanjit?
It's Karanjit.
It's Karanjit.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I was asking the question is because before I came for this interview, I was trying to do some research and I was reading all kinds of articles. You know, which
I'm
have been-
sure you've read a
Global
lot of crazy
articles.
stuff.
And I say global articles which have been written about you. But by and large, it seems that the world at this point of time seems to be celebrating the success that you've got. So I thought I'll begin this interview by asking you, tell me one thing that you regret, one thing which you believe went wrong for you. What would that be?
Personally or
I mean,
professionally?
personally, professionally, whatever. Where did you think that Sunny Leone Karanjit went wrong?
There's actually only one regret I have in life, and that was that when my mother passed away, I didn't get home fast enough. And that's, those types of regrets I have. I don't have really any professional regrets. I've made mistakes, just like anybody has, or maybe made the wrong choice or wrong decision, but I learned from that wrong decision.
What kind of, when you say mistakes, I mean, it's all a part of growing up, and none of us are perfect. But what kind of mistakes would you have made, personally, professionally?
I guess professionally, when I came here, this world, Bollywood is like a culture shock.
Why do you say it's a culture shock for you?
Because it's a different world. Everything happens. There's so much chaos, and somehow that all that chaos is organized chaos. And everybody knows that everything's going to be fine, but I'm the only one that's worried, which ends up not working in my favor, by the way, because I get frazzled when.
Do you get upset? Do you get upset, when you, there's so much which is written about you. I hope you know that you are the most Googled person in India.
Yeah,
you have overtaken even the Prime Minister of India.
I heard that.
So there is something about Sunny Leone which generates a lot of curiosity.
That's true. The first part of your question was?
Yeah, I was just asking you that, what is it, if you get upset sometimes by all this curiosity or the negative comments which sometimes appear about you?
I'm a human being. I am also a human being that's a woman. So I definitely get upset. I don't show anybody that I'm upset, ever.
It's not as if that, let's say, if someone was to say something about you, say something nasty about you, how would you deal with it? Would you call up the person and say, hey, it's my life, and I'm getting on with it in whatever way I want to?
I wouldn't want to give that person the gratification of them knowing that they upset me, ever.
So, here, a couple of things that I picked up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm told that Kapil Sharma, the host of Comedy Nights with Kapil, at one point of time had said that he was not too comfortable shooting with you because he thought that he had family audiences, and Sunny Leone really didn't fit into the description of family audiences. Is this true?
I have no idea because I've been on his show multiple times. I'm happy that I got to be a part of his show. I'm sure if he had an issue,
then he would have raised it with you, perhaps.
I wouldn't be on his show
Bobby
multiple
Khan,
times.
the director of your film, Ek Paheli Leela, I saw a quote from him where he said that he went to a lot of big stars, male actors, to perform with you in that film, and nobody wanted to. Did that make you feel bad? So why I'm raising all this is because there seems that while the commercial value of your work certainly seems to be doing quite well, but there is a lot of resistance, inhibitions about you. How do you deal with that?
I actually don't care about anybody else's inhibitions or what they're insecure with, if they want to work with me or not. It actually doesn't affect my life at all. I work every single day, and I'm very happy for that. So whether I work with XYZ or somebody from this side, it doesn't affect me because I'm still working. And
you think an Amir Khan would ever work with you?
Probably not.
Why?
Because of my background. And
would you want to work with Amir Khan?
Of course, who wouldn't?
So you would want to work with Amir, but Amir would not want to work with
Well,
you.
I have no idea. You'd
But
have
then
to ask him.
how would this reflect on you then?
It doesn't affect me. I'm still going to be an Amir fan. I'm still going to watch all his movies. I'm a realist. I'm not somebody that's, of course I have dreams, and everybody who's in entertainment, most people are dreamers. But first and foremost, I'm a business person. I'm a realist.
But are you worried, Sunny? On one hand, you say that you're a business person. You're a realist. I take that point. But do you not sometimes get affected by the fact that your past, your past that you were this porn queen, will continue to haunt you? Or maybe continue to pull you back. But maybe you could have gone
But you're the only person that, it's the press and the media that says holding back or haunt. I've never said haunt. I've never said held back.
Sure.
I'm not held back. It's like I said, I work, maybe I don't know yet. Maybe one day I get to work with somebody who's this huge star. But at this moment, I don't know any better. So it doesn't affect my world.
So is your past now? Is your past now literally, figuratively, in every way, a thing of the past now?
Yeah,
is that
of
something that you
course.
think about?
Yeah.
Is that something? Let me put it this way. I began this interview by asking you if there was one thing that you would regret. And you spoke about your mother. But let me say that if I was to turn the clock back, would you still do what you did?
100%.
100%. So you would still do the kind of shoots, the kind of work that you used to do
everything
before
I've done.
before you came into Bollywood?
Everything that I've done in my life has led me into this seat. So it's a chain reaction that happens. Everything is a stepping stone to something bigger or better, or you want it to be bigger and better in life. That's what life is all about. When you grow, when you're young, you make decisions that lead you to who you are as an adult, and that's just the way that it works. I don't have any horror stories. I wasn't abused. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't molested. I wasn't raped.
You're the first. I'm sometimes wonder, and pardon me, if I'm in any ways being offensive here, but how many people would think in terms of growing up to be a porn star?
No one.
And you became.
It wasn't
So how did
something that
happen?
I aspired to do. It wasn't something
So how did it
that
happen? That's what I want to know from you. How did that happen?
It just kind of happened. I met an agent, and when I saw these photos of these women, I didn't think, oh, this is vulgar. I didn't think that this is wrong. I thought of it as being beautiful, and I thought them, they're sexy, they're beautiful, they're free, they are doing whatever they want to do. And that's how I saw it.
But you say that you felt that it was sexy, it was beautiful, but look at how your actions are being interpreted in India. Atul Anjan, who happens to be a member of parliament of the CPI, has consistently gone on record, and mind you, he's not the only one, where he holds you responsible for corrupting Indian minds, Indian morality. Again, I go back to it. When these kind of comments are made, how do you deal with them?
I think I am happy to be a part of a political speech. If you think about me so much in your day, you want to put me in your speeches and you want to blame me for things. I think that, it's that person's choice, but I'm glad, I'm waiting for Obama to make a speech about me. I'm waiting for the day when an American politician puts me in his speeches and rants.
Does politics excite you?
Not really.
Do you track politics?
No.
What do you make out of Indian politicians?
Politics are politics, and politicians are chosen in this country by the people. And
the reason why I say that is because a lot of members of your fraternity are very actively involved with politics. Specifically, the likes of Ajay Devgan, Amitabh Bachchan, Amir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, the who's who, of this industry is very closely associated in some way or the other with politics as well. What about Sunny Leone?
I'm personally not interested. I feel that nobody wants to hear me talk about my political views. They'd rather, talk to me about what's hip and new, what TV shows I like, what movies I'm working on. But as far as politics, I think for me that I just keep it on this side.
You keep it on the other side. There are some who believe that if Sunny Leone is becoming this brand ambassador of sorts of this new India, then it's a very dangerous trend to have. That if Sunny Leone is the most Googled...
You're the first person and only person ever to say that.
I'm telling you. No, I'm telling you, a lot of commentary which has gone on social media in particular, where you are very popular. There are many housewives, for instance. There are many Indian, not just housewives, let me put it this way, many Indian married women who look at Sunny Leone as a threat towards their husbands, and they believe that their husbands are all going to be taken away by Sunny Leone. It may be a
Sorry,
joke.
I don't want your husband at all. I have my own. I love him. He's hot. He's sexy. He's very smart. He's very talented. And sorry, ladies, I don't want your husband.
You believe that this is all not. You don't care about all this.
Well, it's not that I don't care. I believe that every husband and wife should have a beautiful relationship, a healthy relationship, that people should be secure in their lives and with who they are and their husbands or their wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, whoever it is in life. At the end of the day, I should not matter in their world.
Let me step into a break at this stage. Lots of questions to be raised out of Sunny on the other side. So tell me about your film, Masti Zade. You must be very excited about this film.
Of course, I'm very excited.
So what's this about?
What's the movie about?
What's the movie about?
It's a love story about two boys and two girls that want to be together.
Is it about two boys and two girls just wanting to have sex? Or is it
No,
about
not at
love?
all.
What is it about? It's
Well,
about love,
I mean,
lust.
it's an adult comedy. There's a lot of adult humor. There's actually no sex at all in this movie. People might think that there is, but there isn't. It's just adult. It's adult comedy where situations and events of comedic errors lead up to, the joke of that scene.
Do you believe that Indian policymakers, or society at large, are we a bunch of hypocrites?
I think that there are hypocrites anywhere in the world.
Everywhere in the world. No, but specifically in the case of India, I see such a huge contradiction. Everyone who's on my Twitter timeline, on my Facebook timeline, wants me to ask you nasty questions. But at the same time, you happen to be the most Googled person in this country. Therefore, I would assume that you arouse a lot of curiosity. How does this extreme curiosity and extreme hatred if it goes hand in hand for you, it could be your USP, but how do you deal with it?
I mean, there's going to be people that hate you all over. It doesn't matter where you are in life. I'm not somebody that gets frazzled or affected by people's negativity at all, not even a little bit. Usually negativity spawns from your own life and how you are. So I have no reason to hate you. And if you have a reason to hate me because of your views in life, then that's your prerogative. You can do whatever you want.
You know, what about, how did you look at Palay Nilani, who happens to be the chairman of the censor board, deleting a kissing scene from a James Bond film because he thought that kissing scene was, well, way too long?
Well,
is that not hypocrisy which is being generated here?
But it's his thought, and it's his. I mean, it's a board that decides that. I'm not the one that decides that, and I'm no one to say what my opinion of it is. You know, as filmmakers and as entertainers, you either push the envelope or you talk about subjects that you really want to, or you make comedy films like Masizade, or you just want to make, you know, commercial films with a very simple story that everybody loves watching, and you come to conclusions with it. So if they cut the scene and it's being shown, then the producers of, you know, that other movie agreed to it.
You know, there are some viewers of mine who are saying that since your identity, since you came into the Big Boss house, and your identity remains that of your past, which is your association with pornography and porn stuff. They believe that you're actually not an actor, that you're still not an actor, and you're doing nothing else. But some are accusing you literally of, you know, of lowering the level of the fine art of cinema. You believe that is that a just criticism?
That's again, the thing is that whatever somebody's opinion is about me, I actually don't care, because I'm working, like I said, I'm working every day. I have 3 movie releases this year.
So what is this about, Sunny? Is it just about money?
It's not just about money.
Ultimately, it's about money.
This is about something that I've always wanted to do. And when you work, just like you're paid to sit to talk to me, I am paid to sit to talk to you. And that's just how it works. And at the end of the day, it is business. We all work because we want to feed our families. But when you're in the art of cinema, there has to be a passion there, and that passion's always been there.
Do you look at yourself as an artist?
I look at myself as an entertainer.
You're an entertainer. You know, in typical Bollywood terms, if I was to use it, you're an item girl. Are you an item girl? Are you an
I
item
don't know.
girl
That's a tag that I only heard of here.
in this world of Bollywood?
I don't see myself as anybody, just a girl that wants to work.
So no. So you know. So my viewers would like to know you. Are you an actor? Do you look at acting as a serious profession?
Of course I do.
Do you believe that, you know, I mean, you have a body and you believe that it's your body which will ultimately take you everywhere?
But it's everybody's face and body that takes them everywhere when you work in entertainment.
Well,
every single actor or actress, their skill level, the determination or whatever their training in life separates them from one actor to the next. But it is the beautiful face that we see on television that we're attracted to watch, that we want to turn the channel to their show or their program or their movie. We buy the movie ticket because we are attracted to the fantasy or the allure of who that person is. That's what entertainment is. It's a fantasy.
Fair enough. Can I give you one statistic and get you to respond to this? It would be fair for me to say that you have really come into your own, or let's say in an Indian context, in an Indian industry context, you've hit the Indian screen over the last 2 to 3 years?
4 years.
4 years? In the last 4 years, according to statistics which have been put up by Pornhub, since you have come in national mainstream in a sense, the number of people who have been watching porn in India has also in a proportionate manner increased substantially, to the extent that we are now the world's largest consumer of porn. Is there any correlation between
Is that just this year or last year?
Well, this
or
year, no,
of all time?
This year,
Okay.
in 2015, the year which has just gotten over, India has become the world's largest consumer of porn. Now, I'm only trying to see whether there's a relationship between Sunny Leone's growth and the number of Indians also getting hooked on.
Well, it would be a really simple answer. If you do a little research and you find out 5 years ago what those statistics were and what this year's was, then we can have a conversation of whether it increased or not.
I have the statistics. We were down to number 3, number 4. I mean, we most certainly were not the world's largest consumer of porn.
Well, I
Which we-
didn't.
which
I
we
didn't
are
create that.
You're not in any way responsible for that, you believe?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Because a lot of chat ratty which takes place that you see a Sunny Leone film, you'll get morally corrupted. I'm wondering whether I'm being morally corrupted because I'm interviewing
Well,
you.
I can leave if you want me to.
No, not at all, not at all. But this, in conclusion, Sunny, this talk, which is largely negative, which takes place against
Really,
you.
this is
On
really
one-
negative. I couldn't tell.
You love it, right? Is that so? Controversy sells as well in this world. You believe that it's this controversial nature, which will keep you going in future?
I have no idea. These are questions that are hypothetical questions that you have no idea whether it's going to or not. I don't like negativity. I never have. I don't want it in my life. But it's just there. It's what the media sells.
Tell me, what kind of movies would you like to be associated with?
I want to work on movies that I think are great stories. The next movie I'm in is the complete opposite of Masizadeh. So we're going to find out whether people are interested in seeing me that way or whether they like the Masizadeh zone.
So will we? Are you saying that we will also see movies of Sunny Leone in future, where Sunny will be dressed up from head to toe in the sari, covered
Yeah, of course.
completely?
Yeah, of course.
That also has its own charm,
Yeah.
right? So what is it that matters more to you? Script matters more, or is there any other part which attracts you?
It's first the script.
First the script, and you look at the script yourself, or
I read every single one that comes to me.
so the reason why you would approve or disapprove of a film is because the script would attract you,
Yes.
not necessarily the money which would be getting
No,
off it.
money secondary.
So my final question to you then, Sunny, all our viewers who would be watching you today, and all of whom would probably again continue to Google you out, how would you want the viewers to look at you?
I want the viewers to look at me how they want to look at me. However they feel like seeing Sunny Leone, then that's how they're going to see me. There's no way that I can change all the viewers that are watching this one interview to change their mind and say, hey, I'm a real person. I'm not, maybe what the media makes me out to be or what you think I might be. So I always say that I need 5 minutes with somebody to have a normal conversation, and I might change that person's view of me, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Sunny, you've taken all these questions head on from us. Thank you so much. Great
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. So anybody who has any response, what do you think of the interview?
This was probably one of the most uncomfortable interviews.
कर रही है.
Hello.
हाँ, अभी भी ब्रेक कर रही है आपकी आवाज.
Ma'am,
Yes, Medha.
ma'am, I felt that, in the beginning only that man said, that ideal Indian woman. So, first, and then secondly, when he asked her about the mistakes that she thinks she committed, so I think he was expecting her to answer that, being a porn star was her mistake in life. She did not think it that way.
Mhm.
And thirdly, I felt that, that man was seeing porn, being a porn star is something either the woman will do out of, a sort of any majburi that she has in life, like a money problem or something, or if she's, like extremely characterless and she enjoys sort of doing it and like there's no middle path. And what Sunny Leone replied was, it was like sort of a thing that she just ended up and it was no big deal for her. She was okay with it. So these are my views.
And ma'am, she's being ridiculed for other people watching porn, that because of you the porn consumption has increased. Like it's
Yeah.
the people who are watching. She's doing a professional job. It's the people who are watching, but she's being ridiculed for that. It's because of you people, and you are corrupting the culture of India, and that wives are concerned about their husband. That's so. This was like very weird. That she's being ridiculed for the work of other people.
Mm-hmm.
This
Ma'am,
was
the whole target of the interviewer was to incite her. Constantly, he was making condescending remarks and repeating her answers in a condescending tone. And I don't know what kind of audience this was being targeted from this interview. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe just
This was
misogynistic
supposed to
men.
be. This was supposed to be an interview to promote her film Mastizade. So there were literally three
But the kind
questions
of
on
questions he
Mastizade.
was asking, I don't
No,
know
no, no.
who
That's what
could
I'm
be
saying. That
entertained.
the interview was meant for people who looks at previews of films which are coming. So this was meant to everybody who would want to go and see Mastizade.
Right.
So how much was promotion of Mastizade and how much was there this moral judgment about who you are, who have you been, and how such a bad thing you did. So he was just stopped short of it. That do you regret having taken that? No, he didn't even stop at that. Also, he continuously was bombarding her in a manner to ensure that she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I chose to know. I was in the porn star business."
Ma'am, he could not accept the fact that she was okay with it. And
Yes.
She was answered every question in a way like she won't be bothered
Yeah, she
any
was
which
such
way.
a poise and so much control. She was in tears at the end of the day. There are interviews post this interview also. And this man is unabashedly bashing her for her career choices in the past. And I think her answers were so perfect. Yes, no, I am in this position today because of what I did in the past. Because, would you do it again? Said, yeah, 100%. She was very clear in her thinking about herself, her work, and for her, there were no morality involved. And also, I think those are very inclusive that if people want to think, they want to think. I got no control. I'm not going to say, oh, always think of me as a good girl. You want to think of me as a porn star? Let them think about that.
that's
She
what
was
Ma'am,
she
I
gave
least
me
think
the
bothered.
idea that she was like, whatever work she did, it was still
Yeah.
dignified work. And
Mm.
she had control over her decisions. And
Mhm.
probably, and the idea that this man just was denying all agency to men to have,
Yeah.
to not be swayed by this entity that is Sunny Leone. And anyway, there was like multiple moral judgments being passed about what porn is, and he has decided it's something which has to be condemned,
Mhm.
and but not the consumers.
So there's no moral judgment about all these men who were watching porn, but all the moral judgment and responsibility of corrupting the men, poor men without minds, that was all on Sunny Leone.
ma'am,
And
sorry
ma'am,
to
the
say,
first
but
time he says,
Yes, I
but
am.
yeah, go on.
yes, ma'am, but I would have to say that I don't remember seeing any person more shameless than the interview. I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing any person. And I would also have to say that the answers of the Sunny Leone was perfect. And I think we have a lot to learn, like how was she humble during the interview. There was not one answer where she lost her cool.
Yeah, she
Even
was
when,
humiliated. She was
yes,
humiliated, but she kept her poise.
yes, and she answered or she gave answers to all his questions, even when he was degrading the level of the conversation which was having. He stooped down so low, and still she gave all the answers perfectly. So I would say that it is very respectable that she
Yeah.
didn't lose her cool, and she didn't even have any regrets. At least even if she didn't had to, like, the interview was not able to, like, get what he wanted out of the interview.
Yeah.
May I speak, ma'am?
Yes, Anush.
What I saw there, it was like extremely a powerful woman who actually made changes in her life with the firm decisions. Like, of course, it's not about wrong or right. That's up to her. And as she said, whatever she did led her here. But eventually, she ended up here in India in this profession. She changed the profession. She has her husband, family as the ideal assumption of the ideal Indian family. She already has that. But still, what I could make is something more than only this interview. The interviewer is enjoying actually to bring her back to what was, as per the interviewer's idea, wrong. And it is not just that he is highlighting that wrong part. He is the one who is making business out of the humiliation of someone, and that someone is a woman. And that someone is a woman who is so powerful enough to make the changes in her career, in her life, but no, it is not allowed. And from interviewer, we can see that he tries his best, and he is enjoying that process of reminding her, hey, woman, remember who you were, and you are not supposed to be here. Because if you are even here now, we don't see your family, your children, your career growth, but we see you still do it for money, for the same thing that you've been doing there. So this is really very sad that people like that are still permitted in the media, and people are following them, and they are making actually opinions based on such people. There are a lot of things to be done. Thank you.
True. So what is his idea of a reasonable woman?
Who is not a sexual being.
Yeah, no, not only you are not a sexual being, you cannot flaunt your sexuality. You need to be regretful if you flaunt your sexuality. Yeah. So you have to be asexual, you have to be shy, you cannot use your body. And I think his whole question that you are using your body for...
entire body with sari, what she pointed out in the last, that you would love to do a movie in which you will be all covered in a sari.
Yeah, so you should be, if you're an ideal Indian woman, you should be covered in a sari. You should be doing family roles. You can't be doing sex comedies, adult comedies, as you call them. So everything was, from perspective of the interviewer, everything she was doing was anti-woman. This is not how good, reasonable Indian women behave. So do you think she was a good, reasonable woman?
Definitely.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
And why do you say so?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Why no?
Ma'am, I think our society is based on norms, and which should be followed. There are many norms which should be strictly followed, and it is beneficial for our society. We cannot let go it on the basis of this women empowerment that can जो कि और किसी को भी एल्यूर कर सकता है इस प्रोफेशन को. अगर हम इसे इंकरेज करते हैं तो और भी हमारी गर्ल्स इस प्रोफेशन में इंटरेस्टेड होंगी, और जो कि आई थिंक सोसाइटी के लिए सही नहीं है. सो इन नॉर्म्स को हमें मेंटेन करके चलना चाहिए. मे बी हम डेवलपमेंट में जा रहे हैं तो हमारा थोड़ा थॉट डेवलप होना चाहिए, बट दीज नॉर्म्स शुड बी फॉलोड.
तो उन लड़कों के बारे में क्या विचार है जो पोर्नोग्राफी देखते हैं और प्रोस्टिट्यूट्स के पास जाते हैं? वो क्या नॉर्म्स में नहीं आते? उनके लिए कोई नॉर्म्स नहीं है.
तो मैम हम उसे खुलेआम
उनके लिए क्या उनके लिए क्या नॉर्म्स है? उनके लिए क्या नॉर्म्स है
मैम? उसके लिए ऐसा
इंडिया
चाहिए.
देखो, इस वाले वीडियो में उसने बताया ना कि इंडिया इज अमंग द हाईएस्ट नंबर्स ऑफ पॉर्न व्यूअर. तो वो जो आदमी जो सारे कर रहे हैं उनके लिए कोई मॉरल कोड है कि उनके लिए कोई मनाही नहीं है?
जी मैम, मनाही है. कोई
आपके हिसाब से लड़कियां अगर पोर्नोग्राफी कर रही हैं तो इसलिए लड़के पोर्नोग्राफी देख रहे हैं, या क्योंकि लड़के पोर्नोग्राफी देखते हैं इसलिए लड़कियां प्रोवाइड करती हैं पोर्नोग्राफी? क्या विचार है आपका? अगर
मैम
कंज्यूमर्स
ये
नहीं
तो
होंगे,
है
अगर कंज्यूमर्स
जी
नहीं होंगे तो क्या वो बिजनेस में अपने सक्सेसफुल हो सकती हैं?
जी नहीं।
तो फिर कंज्यूमर्स ज्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबल हैं कि जो लोग सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं वो ज्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबल है?
तो कंज्यूमर्स भी तो मैम डर के छिपा के ही कर रहे हैं ना ये सारे चीज, खुलेआम तो इसे हम इनकरेज नहीं कर सकते हैं ना इस तरह।
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but I would like to add one point. Ma'am, to earn bread for the family, मैम ये कुछ भी कर सकते हैं। तो ये पोर्नोग्राफी एटलीस्ट चोरी या कुछ किसी क्राइम से तो बहुत अच्छा है। एटलीस्ट शी इज डूइंग समथिंग ऑन हर ओन, कि वो कम से कम कोई क्राइम तो नहीं कमिट कर रही।
अगर हमें वो उसने बोला उसका अगर इकोनॉमिक रिक्वायरमेंट ना हो तब सही है।
Then it is fair, ma'am, if someone is
Ma'am, then
doing
also, ma'am, then also I would say it's her choice. We are no one to judge. It's her choice. Yes, ma'am.
So, because this is all about our views about sexuality. Because when you look at law, the law thinks that the legitimate sphere of sexual activity is within marriage. और उस वाले में इतनी एक्सटेंट तक है that women have not say to say no. वहां पे हम नहीं कहते कि women की मर्यादा है, अगर वो नहीं चाहती है sex with the husband, she can say no. There we say no. Men can have sex even against her will because she has got married. So somewhere this whole important aspect that what is a sexual act which is legitimate, law तो कहता है raping your wife is legitimate, but is it really correct way to look at the sexuality of the men and the women? So women अगर बिना शादी के सेक्स करती हैं तो होगा नहीं लड़की तो वर्जिन होनी चाहिए, लड़के वर्जिन होना चाहिए ऐसा तो हम तो पूछते भी नहीं है, उनका कोई टेस्ट भी नहीं कराते कि वर्जिन है कि नहीं है. So somewhere our double standards of sexual norms are very visible in this conversation. तो लड़कियों को ऐसा करने से ज्यादा एनकरेज होंगी, हम किस बेसिस पे कह सकते हैं? जितनी उसने सुनाई बातें, कितनी लड़कियां तैयार होंगी अपने दिमागी तौर पे रेडी होंगी कि वो उतना ज्यादा टॉन्ट और क्रिटिसिज्म और ह्यूमिलिएशन सह पाएंगी? क्योंकि अगर वो चूज करेंगी तो उनमें इतनी हिम्मत होगी जैसे सनी लियोनी ने अपने आप को डिफेंड किया, अपने डिसीजंस के बारे में रिग्रेट नहीं है, कितनी लड़कियों में उतना दम है? तो ये सोचना कि क्योंकि सनी लियोनी अपने आप को कॉन्फिडेंटली वो डिफेंड कर रही है इसलिए और औरतें उनसे इन्फ्लुएंस हो जाएंगी, ये किस बेसिस पे हम कह रहे हैं? हमारे पास क्या फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर्स हैं जिसके बेसिस पे हम ये कह सकते हैं?
May I speak, ma'am?
Yes, Anush.
Also, I would like to know, the person was mentioning about the norms in our country. There are norms that we have to follow these norms. I really would like to know, as per his opinion, what are those norms and why are they only and always obligatory for women only?
Yeah.
One thing is that, and the second thing is, here there are two things that we are supposed to see. We see it's wrong or right, it is up to each person whether to follow that steps or not. It's very personal to see the norms of the country, of the religion, of etc., and then to adopt something new. And the second thing, when we are talking particularly about this woman, she is someone who already moved out what she did, and she is into the right path as per the norms, so-called one of the elements of the norms, which is supposed to be the right norm for the Indian woman. She is already in the right path, and why we don't see her as an example of someone who did something wrong, and she is already in the right path as per the norms, but still she doesn't regret, because of course if she will regret and if she will turn back and start begging for the mercy from the public for what she did wrong, it will not make her personality a strong woman that she is today. No, it is someone who is very strong, who realized, okay, this is something I am done with, I am starting something new. So these are the two things I think we should think about.
Yeah, and also, when you look at our religious practices, where young girls are donated to the temple to be subject matter of sexual desire, no, sexual satisfaction of all the priests in the temple, in the name of saying they are appeasing the god. So we by religion have made young girls subject matter of prostitution in the name of religion. So then what happens to the Indian norm? Then we forget that women are, I mean, this is considered as a religious act of the family to give their daughter to the temple. How do you justify that by calling, this is Indian? So Indian men can have, Indian priests can have young girls in their temples in order to serve the god, but they serve the priest all through. How do we justify that? And this is even today. So it's not that the boys are also given to the temple. They're not given to the temple. Only the girls are given to the temple. Boys don't have to appease the god. Only the girls have to appease the god through the sexual activity of the priests. So we do not question. We kind of we pick up one symbol and say this is wrong. But there are so many other wrongs which we are promoting ourselves in the name of religion itself. So one has to open our minds to consider as to what we consider as immoral. Why it is not immoral to give your young daughters to the temple and make them serve the priests. And we have to kind of, by law, keep on rescuing girls from those scenarios. We still have in Nepal, I have gone to the temple where there's a Kumari. So Kumari is propagated till a certain age as the goddess, and then she ends up being just the Rakhel or one of these of those priests, and not only one. Everybody in the temple have access to her. So we used to have Rajbadus, which were the royal prostitutes, accessible, of course, to the royal families. But we have these women in our culture, quote unquote. So we cannot say that Sunny Leone is going to corrupt our women, but we ourselves have been sending women to those areas. And the other side, of course, Sunny Leone is not a category which said I was doing it for only earning and I'm doing for to sustain my family. But we do know a lot of prostitute women do it just because they have been raped and therefore ousted from their families. They have been trafficked and put into that in that profession for drugs and by drugs and beatings and rapes. Then there are women who voluntarily come here because there's no other way for them to earn their money. When a person uses his voice to become a singer and entertain, that's okay. But if a woman uses her body and sells her body in order to earn, then there is a moral question. So we have created these categories of morality, all to control women exercising their autonomy over their bodies, while all other body organs we can use. So you can be a painter using your hands to create painting, using your head. So all our physical capacities, excepting sex, we have said you're all right. There's no morality involved in using human body to create art, create revenues for earning. But if a woman who has been abused, she starts using her body in order to earn her money, or even otherwise, she chooses it as a profession, we have a problem. I was talking to one of the sex workers, and she had a daughter who was MBA. And so she had come for the awareness program about their struggles as sex workers. And they say that, no, we have sex workers. Sex work is like any other work. And Sunny Leone, certainly we know today, has a husband, has got children, and there's a stable family there, happily married couple, quote unquote. And this is kind of unacceptable and our unawareness of their personal lives. We see they're only one role. But once we start looking at any work, whether sex work in terms of pornography, whether sex works in case of getting money for sex to the other parties, when we start looking at it as a work, then the question of what safeguards should be provided, as in any other profession. There are lots of countries which have regularized sex work, which do not penalize them. There'll be health checkup, there'll be cars, there's no exploitation. In India, what we have done is that we have not criminalized sexual activity, we have not criminalized prostitution. Prostitution is a legal activity in India. But we have created so many taboos around it to make it difficult for her to be successful in her profession. She cannot advertise, she cannot solicit, she cannot use agents. So all these things which all other businesses do, she cannot do that. But it is an essential social evil, is what the Law Commission says. So if it is an essential social evil, for whose benefit? For men. So they are not in the dock for needing the services of the prostitution or for the consumers of pornography. The whole focus is on the woman who is corrupting the men. The men are so gullible that they can be corrupted. They don't have their mind. They don't have human brains. They do not have the capacity to take decisions for themselves, what's good or bad. All that is not questioned in this morality debate. So I think there's something for us to think about. And it's time for us to stop for today. Tomorrow is Republic Day, so enjoy yourself. Bhaskar, let me see what has Bhaskar written. She says, what's your opinion? So Bhaskar says, unregulated behavior of any, where is it? Individual can't be good for society. Social interest should be preferred before individual interest. Polygamous society can't be good for children and older people. Absolute sexual freedom kills the family value. So absolute freedom for the men is okay. Absolute freedom for the women is the problem. Have you put any restrictions on the men having sex outside their marriages? Adultery was not about them. They were the ones who were having many marriages. They are the ones who are still having sex outside marriage, without marriage, before marriage, after marriage, everything. And there is no penal consequences for that at all, has never been. So unregulated sexual freedom for men is acceptable. Unregulated sexual freedom for women is not acceptable. That's what the norm is. So therefore, we certainly need to rethink that if we are saying that there is requirement of sexual freedom regulation, then it should be equally on both men and women. It cannot be disproportionately on women and none at all on the women, on the men. So somewhere rethinking about what are the sexual norms, to what extent sex is a private affair, and we have been saying the division between private and public sphere. So what people do, and that also leads us to the other questions of homosexual behavior, of same-sex relationships, that whether the regulation, the moralists are always saying that no, the only purpose for sex is to produce children. Then, if that is the only reason, then all other sex should not be permitted with condoms and with all kinds of population control measures. None of them, family control measures, none of them should be adopted. You will have sex only when you need to have children. So that is one extreme position. Nobody accepts that. So somewhere we are having very double and mixed standards, not really thinking clearly about the matter. So that's what we want all us to think about. We meet now on Wednesday, and our class timing, I think, are a little different. I don't remember the new timetable, but I'll send you the detail. Our Thursday class our Wednesday class at present is again 2 classes. That might change to 1 class because I've said I do want, Wednesday class will be a 2-hour class, and Thursday we will have 1 hour, because Monday class from next week, I'm trying to get it changed to 1 class, and instead of having a tutorial on Wednesday, we will shift our tutorial class to Wednesday. But these details I'll let you know once I hear from the timetable committee once again. So see you on, do you know the timetable for Wednesday? Let me just check.
First 2 classes?
Wednesday? Yeah, I think so. First 2 classes.
Yes.
So we meet again at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. So happy Republic Day, and see you on Wednesday.
Same to you, ma'am.
Same to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Attendance लगा दी सबने?
Yes, ma'am.
And I would suggest the ZX people also put your attendance, so I know that which are the ZX which are occupying places but are actually not attending. But the seats are getting filled up and requests are still coming. So then I need to remove the people who are not attending the classes.